This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. All right, guys, we've got a special guest on the podcast today. His name is Josh Latimer. So he is an entrepreneur, business coach, and a consultant. But I'm just going to tell you right from the beginning, I wasn't exactly sure what we were going to talk about today. Very rarely do I come into an interview having less than a really solid idea of where we're going to go. Like, even if I'm reading someone's book or I watch someone's documentary or something like that, I have a pretty good idea of where we're going to go. But some of my favorite interviews that I've ever done have gone essentially how this one went. That's where, okay, I kind of map out what I'm going to do and what we're going to talk about. But then I can tell right from the beginning, I'm not going to really be hitting any of these high points because I just want to follow these threads. And so the interesting thing about that is I just so love this conversation because we just followed threads about money, about entrepreneurism, about specifically how Christians view money and entrepreneurism, how capital can be used, how it affects the family. And that's really one of the biggest points. And so I even changed in the middle of this because I already came up with the title of the episode, but then I'm like, no. We need to change this to the lies that Christians believe about money. Because he and I grew up very similar in that we kind of grew up with a poverty mindset that was put into us, which a lot of that is put there by fear and by just being unsure of what future is going to look like and anxiety and all those different things. But for him, if you go back to the early 2000s, he's living in a trailer park with his, new wife and he's delivering pizza. And then a couple of years later, they go completely bankrupt, right? Because he was upside down in the trailer that he had and this kind of big, crazy story. And to see where he's at now, having built and sold multiple businesses, having, gone the entrepreneurial journey, staying on that journey, but now he's basically dedicated his life to helping other people, specifically Christians, kind of live out an entrepreneurial lifestyle, not just, in terms of their bank account and their profession, but even in their mindset, because he knows the downstream consequences, positive consequences that's going to have for the capital K kingdom, but also for your little kingdom, which is your house, which as men, we are called to be the head of our households. We are called to be the heads of our wives, and we are called to be the heads of our children and to catechize them. And we're going to have to give an account someday for how good of a job we did in those areas, and specifically loving our wife as Christ loved the church. And so this conversation goes in a lot of different directions, but we did end up with something called the Kid WarPlan. And so this is something that I knew about, that I had heard that he had done before, but we really, really dig into the details towards the end of the interview. What is the Kid WarPlan? Why is it this physical, tangible, you can touch it book? Why is it, so expensive, for them to make and for people to buy? But what does it do for families? Because I know there's a lot of consternation with a lot of guys out there. They want to be doing the dad thing and doing the husband thing. And they want to be doing it on purpose, but they don't really know how. And, people are, they have this program or that program, but some of them aren't really quite your style. They don't really have the masculine heart and mind in mind when they're creating these types of things. And I feel like Kid WarPlan has really threaded that needle. And so we spend quite a bit of time elucidating, okay, what is that? What does it do specifically for dad, for mom, for the kiddos? And so I think that'd be a tremendous value for all of you. And so, yeah, I just really enjoyed my time with them. So I'm going to cut off my intro so you guys can get after it. So guys, without further ado, let's get into it. Josh Latimer, welcome to Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast.
Kyle, you're a legend and a scholar. Thanks for having me.
Now, I've been called a lot of things, Josh, but legend, never been one of them. Scholar, probably not that either. So I do appreciate the compliment from the very beginning. But I just got to tell you, Josh, one of my favorite things in life, I like a lot of things. I love jujitsu. I think baseball is great. Dogs are the coolest thing in the world. But pizza is one of the greatest things to me. If I could eat pizza all the time and not be a billion pounds, that would be one of the things I would want to do. And you had the distinct honor of not only consuming pizza, but delivering pizza. So let's go all the way back to early 2000s, okay? Because everyone knows kind of what you do now, all the coaching and business and entrepreneurial success and all that. But early 2000s, you're newly married to your lovely bride, Ashley. You're living in a trailer park, which I'm wondering, does it sound as cool as it sounds? Or is it as cool as it sounds? And you were delivering pizza for a living. And sometime right around in that whole period, you also filed for bankruptcy. So it seems like you're checking all of the most fun boxes, but you did them a long time ago. So let's go back there. What was going on in your world back then?
Oh, man. I can't be the only person, but I had humble beginnings, parents that loved me, but there's a lot of pressure, a lot of poverty programming in my brain. And yeah, I delivered pizzas. I think pizza is proof that God loves us and that he's real, personally, I'm just saying. But but I would listen to like little business cassette tapes for all the old people, you know, in my little Chevy S10 as I deliver pizza. And I was fascinated by entrepreneurship and success and stuff. But I didn't know anything. And I was proud of the trailer that we lived in. A buddy of mine used to make fun of us. He called it a condominium, like a condominium. Like, yeah. You know, I had a mortgage on our trailer and I had a vehicle title. Literally, I had both of those documents. And the reason we filed bankruptcy was I paid $52,000 for this trailer and I bought it without a cosigner at 19 years old. Got married at 20 and we were trapped in it because it was only worth $30,000, but I owed $52,000. And the guy that sold it to me for more than he was legally allowed to. It was a whole big mess. And, you know, one of my favorite quotes is don't despise small beginnings. And we did have a small beginning, but the seed was planted back then that there were other possibilities, that I could build something or create something or become more. I didn't know how. I had a lot of bad character traits, but that was the beginning of learning what I didn't know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to key in on something that you said there because it's something that I've tried to describe other people just to even further elucidate it in my own brain. But like a poverty mindset or poverty ideals that are kind of ingrained in somebody potentially from a young age. Like when you say that, what do you mean?
False beliefs about money, your relationship with money. Christians, you know, on the business side, I work with a lot of small business owners. They're by far the most frustrating business owners to even work with. I personally think that poverty is always a spiritual warfare problem. And it's because of false beliefs. It's things that we believe are true that are not true. And because we believe they're true, it dictates our emotions and our actions and all these things. And, you know, the whole wealth is wickedness and poverty is piety and I'm holy because I'm a failure. Where did that come from? And people debate that. I'm not an expert on that. I think it goes back to like the Catholic Church and like feeling bad. And I don't know, but that stuff is preeminent now in the church with business owners. And what you think is true about money controls a large part of your life. You know, even people that aren't entrepreneurs, you know, they say things like money's not important. Money's not everything. And they keep repeating this. No one thinks that money is everything. So they just keep saying this. It's like, what do they really mean by that? Because they're still trading 50 hours a week of their life to get more of it. Yet they're continuously telling themselves how not important it is. And so I think it's fascinating. Zig Ziglar said that money's not everything, but it's similar to air. Meaning if you don't have enough of it, it's the only thing you can think about. And, you know, the purpose of life isn't to breathe air. But you can't do the purpose of life without the air, right? So there's some relation there and you can go too far with it. And we should talk about all that stuff, but it's a fascinating topic. It's a polarizing topic. My heart is to help people that do feel called to entrepreneurship to go big because the world's crazy. We need winners. We need finances for the kingdom. And, you know, you got to learn the game of business and learn how to think different to achieve that, period.
Okay. I'm curious to even dig in a little bit further. Where do you think that mindset comes from? Because, you know, I have some guesses off the top of my head. Okay, Jesus was not a wealthy person as it pertains to, you know, human earthly wealth. So perhaps people are calling back to that. People that don't understand scripture will say things like money is the root of all evil when that's not what the scripture is saying. It's, you know, the love of money is the root of all evil. You have individuals that see the excesses of maybe like a Benny Hinn or one of these, you know, Joel Osteen or these types of guys. Yeah. And then they're like, well, obviously that's wrong and that's immoral. And so if I do the opposite of that and I swing as far as I can to the opposite way, then maybe I'll be moral. Maybe God will love me. And also I think it, you know, when people say, hey, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're just going to pray about it. It's like, I'm not anti-prayer by any stretch of the imagination, but you can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay your bills with hopes and dreams and prayers. Not saying that prayers can't assist you in those areas, but like you have to pay them with money. You have to exchange money, currency for a product or a service. And so I guess if you had to try to boil it down, Josh, like where do you think that whole ideology stems from? Where does it come from? Aside from just the pits of hell.
It's so deep, man. A buddy of mine who's kind of internet famous now, his name's Myron Golden, and everyone should go watch all of his videos because he's amazing. And I met Myron like 7 years ago. I've known him for a while. He's an incredible human being. And before he was rich and famous, he was the same person that he is right now. But he has this teaching where he talks about how really the fall of man in the Garden of Eden had to do with Eve fixating on lack. And so I think the root of this money thing is that it's we fixate on lack. It's like an orphan mindset type of thing. And what I mean is you think about the Garden of Eden, every single thing you could ever want to have in a super awesome place to live was there. There was only one thing that they weren't supposed to do. They had everything else. But what does the human brain do? It wants to notice the thing it doesn't have instead of all the things that it does have, right? So we gravitate towards that. And so a lot of people, I think, have fear around their own inadequacies. They don't want to try and fail. So because they don't want to look stupid and try and fail, it's easier to develop a heuristic around not trying makes me holy, righteous, or good somehow. But it's not the actual truth of what they feel. And so there's a lot of complicated mental gymnastics that happen with people. But the bottom line is this: God put gold in the Garden of Eden. Why? Gold is the universal marker for money, wealth, currency, whatever. It was there, and he called it good. Then there's a story of Abraham, and it said that Abraham was rich. Actually, it said that he was very rich, and it was good. And so there's this weird thing. There's also an Australian businessman named Peter J. Daniels who was illiterate until 25 years old. He had 4 stepdads. He had a poverty life, and he got radically saved. And he read the Bible with this level of almost beautiful ignorance where he said, wait a second, God's a king and I'm the child of a king. And he took that literally. He said, I'm the child of a king. A child of a king can't be poor. And so he built this business empire in Australia. He's a very famous Australian businessman who's in his 90s now. And he actually hired a bunch of people, historians, to figure out what was the value of the gifts that the wise men gave to Jesus, right? We hear the story of the 3 wise men. And, if you dig into that story, it took like a couple years for these people from Persia to kind of go and make it to where Jesus was. And Jesus wasn't a baby when they got there. He was maybe a couple years old. And they had an army with them when they showed up. And did you think they dropped a birthday card off to him? And so there's just a lot of religious things. And then there's like true things. So the Bible has these seemingly contradictory things where it's like opulence and abundance and wealth should be the natural state of the king's children. Jesus came as the second Adam to put things back like they were, to restore mankind back to God's original intent. And God's original intent was to have more than enough. There's more than enough for everyone to have more than enough. There's not a fixation on lack. But then, of course, we can, go the other way with it. So when I think about all these things, I think the root is a focus on lack, not being honest with ourselves. And I also think it's rooted in selfishness. I think not wanting to make more money is a great act of selfishness in many cases, because they're basically playing small to protect themselves instead of going all out. And the last thing I'll say is every single thing that God made, he made to grow and expand, all of it. Whether it's a solar system or it's like a particle or it's an ant colony or it's a business. And so the natural state of God's creation is to grow and expand. It behaves like a garden. But yet with our wallets and our finances and our mindsets and our skill sets and our own ability to produce value, we don't want to do that. We think that's naughty or something.
Okay, so I like when you're breaking in, because recently I was even going back over Genesis 3, and you do see what Eve was tempted with. It's what is called back to in 1 John 2, where it's lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life, right? And so all that is kind of circling the drain, if you will, in that story. But then if we bring it out to a modern context, you talk about playing big versus playing small, different things like that. I know there are people like you and I have a common friend in Riley Meek, who he's like, no, everyone's an entrepreneur. And he gets into the etymology of where the word comes from and, how it's elucidated throughout scripture and different things like that. And not everyone buys that. Some people do, some people don't. I'm a little bit skeptical of that mindset, because I think some people were built to do well in a cubicle, to have their small little sphere of influence. And that's the life that they were meant to lead for the sake of the gospel and for the sake of the kingdom. And then there are people that are more entrepreneurship based. But I wonder, Josh, if it's because when we think entrepreneur, we think of some of those big guys. We think of, an Elon Musk or someone like that that's built just this incredible, huge empire. When that's not, how many people have had that level of success? You can count them on your 2 hands. And so is it that when we hear the word entrepreneurship, we just give it too much grandeur, or that we don't fully understand it or something like that?
Oh man, that's so good. People like worship entrepreneurs now. It's like pop call. It's diabolical.
It's currency.
Not good. Um, to me, entrepreneurship isn't a job title. It's a mindset. So, for example, if you work inside of a company, the goal is to think like an entrepreneur. Here's what I mean. What I mean is, how can you produce more value? How can you, instead of looking for more resources, become more resourceful? That's what entrepreneurship is. How do we make 1 + 1 = 3? I don't care if you're an employee or you're delivering pizzas. How can you be the biggest value producer in the role that you're in? That's what I mean by grow and expand. You know, how many parables did Jesus talk about, you know, the multiplication of the talents, right? So everybody listening to this has something in their hand. Your job, your role, your calling, your destiny is to multiply what's in your hand. And as you do that, doors open, doors close, things happen. There's level up, there's opportunity. Maybe your role and your purpose is small, whatever you think that means, but it's really not. You're just fulfilling your purpose. But entrepreneurship is a way of thinking. It's value creation. I mean, the root of it is some people think that they need more resources and that's why they're not more successful. Other people think, how can I become more resourceful? You know, an entrepreneur sees, or let's do this. Have you ever heard the truism, you know, money doesn't grow on trees? It's a thing people say.
Yeah.
It's not true. Money absolutely grows on trees, but people don't think that it grows on trees, right? Or people say things like time is money. False. That's just cataclysmically false. It's totally wrong. It's incorrect. It's a ruse. It's not true. Time is infinitely more valuable than money. Money is an infinite spiritual resource, and time is a finite fixed resource. But back to the tree thing, you see, an entrepreneur mindset looks at a tree and it's like, okay, there's lumber here. There's apples that we can grow here. I forget who said the quote, you can count the number of apples on a tree, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. You know, everything's about reaping and sowing and seeds and gardens. And there's this beautiful theme from the Old Testament to the New Testament, to the talents, to the multiplication. God wants us to take what's in our hand and multiply it. And that comes from having a value creator. Step outside your comfort zone, use your imagination and your intuition and your hard work collectively to go for it and to do stuff, right? If you're going to be in your cubicle, how can you be the most efficient, most profitable person that's ever worked for that company? That's, to me, what an entrepreneur means. It's not so much if you own a business or not. It's a way of thinking.
I like that it's more of a mindset shift because, you know, everyone likes to play with the words micro and macro, and they see themselves, if they are working for a small company or they have a small team, maybe think they have a micro purpose. It's like, no, you have a macro purpose. You just might be in a micro setting or something that seems like a micro setting, because you're not just, you know, a C-suite executive for a Fortune 100 company. Those aren't the only people playing in the big leagues, right? And so if you think about it in those terms, it does actually help you a little bit. But I'm going to go back to where you were talking about value creation. You and I have discussed this before. I've talked to you before about, okay, some people can create value that can lead to currency, and some people can just create value that leads to, you know, okay, currency versus like relational currency or emotional currency. There are things that you can do to kind of create space. Like if you go and, you know, babysit the kids for a single mom, like, yes, you're helping her save currency from having to pay someone to do that, but also you're giving her the emotional and maybe even spiritual currency of just breath and space and different things like that. But just flow a little bit more on value creation, because I think that's the delineating point. And that's where we can get into a big blown out discussion about free markets. Because what a free market does is it says, here's the thing that I say is valuable that I'm offering to the marketplace. And the marketplace tells you whether or not that thing is valuable or whether or not you have valued that or priced that valuable thing properly, right? So let's talk a little bit more about value.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation because value is a really weird, ethereal, floaty word that means different things to different people. But what is value? Value is the solution to a problem. And it's very subjective. In fact, I heard a study that determined that over 90% of GDP globally is things that people don't need. Meaning almost everything all of us buy and sell, no one needs them. I mean, technically speaking, we need like water, food, shelter. There's like a handful of things that are needs. And then there's like the basic version of those things, right? So bicycles aren't a need. They're just an awesome thing. They solve a problem. They help someone go faster. Then a car helps you go faster than a bicycle, and a plane helps you go faster than a car. And so someone's innovation created leverage for someone else. It made someone's life better. Value is how can you solve a problem for someone? In terms of how to price it, yeah, free market kind of decides how to price it. But even that is way more elastic than people think it is. In business, one of the big problems small business owners have is they price their price just barely enough to survive because they feel bad being a premium service provider or something. The reality is there's people that would never pay someone else to mow their lawn, but that same person would spend $5,000 on one golf club. And you can think that's irrational or rational, but the reality is all of us have irrational relationships with certain things that we deem valuable. And that's what creates markets, right? And so it's this really artsy thing. I mean, success in business is part science, like behavioral psychology and humans and like math. Every business is in the arithmetic business. So there's that. But then this other side is art. And it's like beautiful and it's creative. And if we're made in the image of God, and the first thing we learn about God is that he's a creator. In the beginning, God created, right? If we're made in his image, like Myron says, another Myronism is God created us to create stuff and made us to make stuff. And everything that's created is created twice. Kyle, this is so profound to me. You have to first imagine it, then you can do it. Everything, whether it's an architect designing a house, but like there's like the thought process of envisioning the thing, and then there's like the physical of doing the thing. And a lot of Christians, whether they're entrepreneur or not, we spend almost no time at all dreaming, thinking bigger, solving problems. We're good at pointing out problems, but we're not fantasizing and daydreaming about how to solve problems, about new solutions, right? We're not doing that with our jobs. We go through the motions. And to me, that's not you multiplying your talents. And what's awesome is if you do start thinking like this, you will make more money automatically. And I think that that's good. I think people that love the Lord, that have more money, will be exactly what they already are, except they'll have more resources. They'll be more generous than they were before. They will do things other. The best thing Satan could ever do is to keep Christians poor and to feel like they're self-righteous because of it.
Hey guys, real quick. A consistent question that I am asked is, Kyle, what is your diet? People want to know if I'm tracking macros or if I'm doing keto or something like that, but I track one thing. I try to get 1 gram of high quality protein for every pound of body weight. And so for me, I eat red meat every single day. Pretty much for lunch, I eat a pound of red meat every single day to get over 100 grams of high quality protein. And guys, I want you to be able to get the same thing for you and your diet. That's why I want you to use the official beef delivery partner of Undaunted.Life, and that's Primal Beef. Primal Beef is a cattle operation owned and operated by Sean Glass. He's a retired Navy SEAL that partnered with Jocko Willink, yes, that Jocko Willink, to launch Primal Beef. So what makes Primal Beef different from the other beef delivery companies? It's a combo of the following. It's all American Black Angus cattle. The beef comes from one farm, and that's in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. The beef is all natural, no hormones ever, no antibiotics ever, no mRNA ever. After slaughter, the entire carcass is dry aged and then hand cut by artisan butchers and then flash frozen to ensure that it maintains tenderness, marbling, and flavor. And here's another cool thing. For every box sold, Primal Beef donates meat directly to a member of America's Special Operations Forces through the C4 Foundation. So you can take pride in knowing that your purchase will help put literal food on the table for America's finest warriors. Are you salivating yet? If not, it's probably because you're a vegan. Stave off veganism and try Primal Beef out today by going to www.primalbeef.com. That's primalbeef.com. Use the promo code Kyle to get $25 off of your first order. Again, that's primalbeef.com, promo code Kyle to get $25 off your first order. Okay. One thing that's also a through point of what you're talking about, it seems like, is the difference between ideas and execution. So I have some pillars that I help teach some guys and some things that I just follow in my own life. There's so many people out there, Josh, that have a great idea. So let's take it out of the business world for a second. Let's just go to the physical. Man, it sounds like a good idea to wake up early and to lift weights and go run. Man, that's a great idea. But then the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. the next morning and you haven't pre-decided that you're actually going to follow through on the workout. And so there you are in your warm bed thinking about the cold outdoors and pavement. And you're like, I think I'll stay here. And so it's idea versus execution. I could give a crap what your idea is, right? Everyone's got different forms of the same quote, but it's like you could have 100 ideas and execute on 0 of them, or have 2 ideas and execute on both of them. And I'll take the executor over the person that's just the idea guy. Everyone's like, oh, this is an idea person. I was like, oh, so they don't know how to get crap done. They just sit around thinking all day long. Like, that's cute. And you need thinkers. You need people that are high in trade openness and people that are high in conscientiousness. Those are the people that actually get things done. But that's what it seems like is the difference in the world of entrepreneurism. If you could just boil it down to its baser parts, it's an idea that is taken to execution as opposed to an idea that is existing just for the sake of existence. What say you?
I mean, what you said is irrefutably true. Ideas by themselves aren't worth a whole lot. I personally think it has to do with identity. Okay. Actually, I know it has to do with identity. So money issues, success, even fitness and all, everything is identity. And people might not like that, but the reality is that people essentially live up to the level that they think that they are, and then they stop. So if you were raised by a really good mom and dad who made $100,000 a year and they worked hard and they did the right thing, and then you're that person, maybe you think that that's what you are, right? The trick is understanding who God says that we are. And it's different for everybody. I don't think being more successful gets you like brownie points in the sense that you're better than some other believer. In fact, I think the opposite is true, because Jesus made it clear with the story of the widow giving the widow's mite in the offering. And she said, truly, I tell you, she gave more than all of you, right? It's almost like inverted. The first will be last, the last will be first. If you are listening to this and you have a big company, you should like be almost have this heavy humility and borderline like heaviness around like, oh my gosh, I have this whole huge thing. I better not screw it up. Right. And the little school teacher that pours into 3 kids on the side might be doing more on a relative scale than the other guy. You know what I mean? But execution is important, but execution is easy, Kyle, when you are fully persuaded in who and what you are, what you think you deserve. You know, the theology I grew up with was like angry dad theology. And so who I thought God was a really mad dad, because I was a naughty boy and I looked at a boob on the internet. And so I'm dirty and bad and naughty. And he wants to hit me with a stick. That's what it felt like. And then I viewed Jesus as the guy that stepped between angry dad and me. And he's like, it's okay, dad. He's with me. Right. And I was confused on like, on this thing. And so because I think that's true, I take actions in my life based on me thinking that's true. The problem is it's absolutely not true at all. God is a loving father. Jesus embodies every attribute of God. The God of the Old Testament and Jesus of the New Testament is the same thing. So if it looks like there's a discrepancy, it's because we're confused on the nature of God. So knowing who is God, but then secondarily, knowing who am I? Who am I? Right. So in business, I say that there's orphans, there's sons and daughters, and then there's kings and queens. And these are the 3 phases of business, because orphans, basically all the decisions they make are optimizing for survival. And so financially, for the person listening to this, are you optimizing for survival? Because if you are, meaning you have just enough to barely make it kind of all the time, and it seems impossible and you can never get ahead, but if you get below your little panic number, you'll still figure out a way to solve the problem and still survive. You keep succeeding at surviving. That's an orphan mindset. So who you think you are, what you think you're capable of, what you think you deserve is driving that result for you. And then if you move into son-daughter mindset, you're better off, but you start optimizing for security. And a lot of Christians live here. It's like they have the golden handcuffs at their job. They know they're called to be an author. They know they're called to be a speaker. They know they're called to start a ministry. They're thinking about these things, but they're not executing. And the reason why is because they think that they need to be safe all the time. And, you know, what I encourage people to do is to dip your toe in the water and start thinking about what does the king, queen mindset look like for you? And it's different for everybody. Meaning, what did God give you dominion over? Because you're supposed to subdue stuff and conquer stuff. And by the way, not dominion like in the worldly sense of a king subjugating people. No, in a servant king, wash the feet of your subjects king. Because a lot of people know deep down that they were meant for something, but because they're optimizing for security, they're never going to do that. Therefore, they're not multiplying the thing that's in their hand. I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, it does. It goes back to I grew up in a family where the jobs were stable, but there wasn't a lot of excess, but I was never hungry or cold. I guess you could say it that way, but we weren't going on lavish vacations. But then you fast forward, that mindset is, dad works at one place for his entire career, retires. Mom works in one place her entire career, retires. And their idea is, hey, neither one of us went to school. You need to go to school, get an education. And then when you get out, get that job at that one place that you'll work at for the next, 45 years and then retire. You get your gold watch and get the hell out. And some people, you're like drawn to the entrepreneurial side, but you're also drawn to safety and comfort. And so, I mean, I guess let's go all the way back to you, because you experienced poverty and bankruptcy, and there's a lot of emotions that are tied into that. And here you are as a provider for a wife, but also for children. And, they're watching and picking up on everything. And when mom and dad are stressed about money and they think they're keeping that from your kids, that's cute because they can feel it too, guys. They can absolutely feel it. But at some point you kind of like, I don't know, I guess washed off all the bad juju of kind of that bad start. And you did get into the world of entrepreneurism and business and value creation and selling businesses and all that. So let's just go back to early entrepreneurial journeys and some of those, I guess, inherent lessons that you learned along the way.
Well, the first really spiritual encounter I had with Jesus was when I was 12. And I was mowing my neighbor's lawn because I would get paid $20 to mow a couple acres for a really old guy named Gordon. Gordon was a legend. He would watch the Detroit Tigers baseball game on TV, but he turned the volume up so loud because he was blind as a bat and he just wanted to listen to it. And then when he would pay me $20 to mow his lawn, he'd open up his wallet and point it out to me, and he would trust me to take out a 20 because he had hundreds and 50s and 20s. And that always meant a lot to me. And I remember I was mowing his lawn. I'm trying to talk to God and pray. And God told me to give all of the money away that I had saved up. And here's the thing. I'm not one of the people that God's like talking to me all day, saying stuff. But this made me stop the lawnmower as a 12-year-old. This is a core memory for me because God told me something clearly and it shook me. And I was excited. And I realized pretty early on for me that this isn't for anybody else. I'm talking about me. My calling is radical generosity. And I was excited. So I run home. I tell my parents, hey, I have $200 saved up from all the whatever I had done that summer. I'm going to give it to our tiny little church. And they're like, no, honey, it's just give $5. That's so sweet. You want to do that? I'm like, no, God told me to do it. I didn't even think that thought. It wasn't even a thought in my brain. And they're like, okay. And so I did it. Well, in the back of my mind, I've always known I want to be a kingdom financier. Now, you can't finance much of a kingdom without having resources, right? The hardest part for me, I've built and sold 4 companies at this point, and our kids are entrepreneurs and all these things, but we were really in a bad spot with poverty mindset. Now, how can I think that I'm supposed to be poor and that being successful is bad while simultaneously knowing I'm called to give away a lot of money? These are contradictory ideas. It caused a lot of cognitive dissonance. It caused all kinds of stuff. And so there was no straight line to anything. It was a mess. And through God's grace and through impossible divine appointments and meetings and tons of things that happened, I learned this so that then I could do that. And then I learned this so I could do that. And then you stretch that out over 20 years and we're here where we are right now. It's a journey, but I think I had the benefit of knowing who I was supposed to become from 12. I don't think a lot of people know.
Okay, so 12 years old, God tells you give it all away. Parents try to stop you. They try to get in the way of God, and you're like, nah, parents, get out of here. I'm the smart one. I'm going to take care of business. And you do that. But you bring up a few things in there, Josh. So ministry costing money, good work of the kingdom needing funds in order to allow that to go. That's one thing, when we had Riley on earlier this year, there were some people that were not really happy with that conversation because almost the entire conversation was about money. But I'm like, guys, did you hear the actual point? The point is being a kingdom-minded entrepreneur that is funding the things of the kingdom. Because when you have a family that's living overseas doing missionary work or church planning or something like that, how do you think those family pay their bills? Maybe there's a big church and they take a percentage of the tithe and they take care of the Jones family and that's how it's all done. But in a lot of cases, it's individuals that have done well in areas of business, in some way, shape, or form, or they've bought and sold things, or they've, sold a business that they've built after time or something like that. And those are the people that are paying for the hands and the feet and for the readiness of the gospel to be taken to the edges of the earth. But I don't feel like a lot of people think in those terms as like, man, if I make more, I'll be able to give more. I'm reminded of Dave Ramsey, and, I'm not a huge fan of all of his financial ideals, but some of them are super solid. But his big thing is like, live like no one else so that someday you can give like no one else. It's like, it's so awesome if you can like just pull money out of your wallet and pay for a single mom. I keep using that example to get her car fixed or to replace the refrigerator or those types of things. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you have this small mindset, you're not going to be able to really overwhelm people with blessing. So before I get off onto a sermon or my own separate podcast, come in, save me, give me some thoughts.
I think what I think is interesting is even if it wasn't an entrepreneur that paid for the missionaries, whoever did pay for the missionaries did so because of an entrepreneur. You ever heard the quote that you can't love jobs but hate job creators? And This is tricky because I don't even think we have pure capitalism in America. It's more of a corporatism, crony, very corrupt, giant billion-dollar thing. There's all that, right? But what capitalism is a person solving a problem, building system structure and rallying people around that problem, and it creates opportunity, right? And you building your dream house helps build wealth for 50 other parties that are involved in the process of building the dream house. And every job that anybody even has, if they're not an entrepreneur, they have an entrepreneur to thank because someone somewhere at some time took a risk, invested capital, invented something, probably had tremendous pain and suffering, and now you have a job. And we don't really appreciate that if it's a really large company because it's just this big corporate Borg, right? But it comes back to a person with an idea that manifested that through lots of hard things, right? So all the money in all of our pockets are the result of somebody selling something to someone else at a profit. And that's a wild thing to think about too, because then people are like, well, no, the government can give money. Well, how does the government get money? I mean, you can't tax someone that didn't sell something to someone at a profit and then pay the tax on the thing. Sales and commerce and service and entrepreneurship and inventions and trinkets and food and it's people loving people, and God made us interdependent like that. So the goal isn't to get rich and flex and buy a hot tub and a jet ski. The goal is to multiply whatever is in your hand. And if the reason that you get triggered when people talk about entrepreneurs, well, I'll just ask a question. Are you sure that the reason you're getting triggered when people talk about money and entrepreneurs isn't because of your own guilt and shame around not multiplying what's been in your hand for a long time? Your own fear of putting yourself out there and looking stupid. Maybe you're supposed to start a podcast like Kyle, but you don't do it because you don't want it to be bad, right? That is an ego thing. Money is a great ego thing too. They don't want to try. They don't want to have an idea. Maybe it will fail. We need to grow and expand. We need to not live in fear. And I believe that abundance is God's natural state for people. That's the way it should be.
So the only thing I didn't really hear the last 2 minutes of your answer because you triggered me because you brought up a jet ski. And I think I've talked about it on this show. Don't worry, we'll get back to the subject matter. But my entire life, my bucket list is I got some cool stuff on there and I got some pretty lame stuff on there that I should have checked off a long time ago. One of those things is to ride around on a jet ski. It's never happened. I'm almost 40 years old and I've never once, I live in a state with lakes every 14 feet and I've never been on a jet ski. Well, actually, I take that back, Josh. One time when I was a teenager, I was fine. It was finally going to happen. I'm going to ride around on a jet ski. My entire life has come to this point in this moment. Yes, exactly. God stopped time. Everything focused right down on me. I hop on that jet ski and I go to rev it. Boom, boom, boom. And it dies. It dies. All my friends had already taken off on their jet skis and on the boat. And here I am in the middle of the lake waving my arms. And eventually I got someone's attention. They got me and they had to, basically tow it back to shore. And by that time, it was time to go home. And I've still never ridden around on a jet ski. So I don't know why I was supposed to tell you that, but maybe somebody out there, maybe you can help me check that box. But let's get back to the real reason why we're talking about this. So I feel like, Josh, you seem like a nice guy. right? You seem, smart. You can philosophize, but you can also get down in the weeds and take care of business. You're high in openness and conscientiousness. But I feel like if you were more like me and you just said the thing in the most aggressive way that you can think to say it in that exact moment, you would just flat out say that Christians, for the most part, don't understand money. And so, like, I'll say Christians don't understand money, and you say it's softer and more smart-like. So ready, set, go.
People believe lots of lies about money. I'll just say that. Some of them are that time is money. Another one that is that money is scarce. Another lie people believe about money is that there's an economic pie. There is no such thing. It does not exist. It's not how the economy works. And the reason that one's a particularly diabolical belief is that if you think that you winning means someone else is losing, you're going to be extremely limited in your ability to create wealth or become more financially successful. People think that if you start a company and make money, that someone somewhere made less money, but the exact opposite is true. I mean, the economy behaves like a garden, which is why when you consume an apple, you actually create more apples, right? Because the seeds go in the ground and create 5 more trees, which create 10,000 more apples. And so consumption creates production. And so people just don't know that. Part of it's school, right? School, Myron calls them government indoctrination centers. That's a big part of the problem because traditional schooling is basically compliance training, and they're trying to create employees. And some of the most successful evil entrepreneurs have had their fingers involved in the education system for the last 100 years, more than 100 years. And what it does is it teaches you to do the problem, get correct answer, memorize what I told you to memorize, regurgitate it, get a gold star. Do not get a bad grade, get a good grade. Comply, do it the way that we said it. I remember as a kid one time, I got a math problem correct, but I had to show my work. And the way that I got to the answer was different than what they wanted me to do. And so I got the answer wrong, even though the answer was correct because the work was wrong. And so we're huge. We have 5 kids. We homeschool them. We're not obsessed with money at all. In fact, a lot of times poor people are way more obsessed with money. We're obsessed with success because everything God made, he made to succeed. He doesn't create things to fail. Things do fail. Let's be really clear. That's not God's intent when he makes things. He makes things to grow and expand and to exceed expectation and to be a winner, right? So anyway, when we're homeschooling our kids, we teach them things like this because even the word money, we don't use that word when I'm talking to business owners. I use the word capital because money has all this emotional baggage associated to it. Capital is a different, higher level word. It feels more like an asset or a thing to use instead of a thing to consume. We want our kids to be producers, not just consumers. We don't want them to watch YouTube videos. We want them to create YouTube channels. And it's not because I care if they do that or not. It's as we figure out who they are, we're teaching them to be world changers and value creators, right? And movement makers, because that is just obvious to us that makes sense to do that. And so I think schooling is a big part of it. Religious programming is the other big part of it. Because, if a pastor buys a nice car, a pastor of our church, one time he bought a blue Ford Mustang. And it was a nice church, had like 1,000 people go to it. He bought a blue Ford Mustang. They wanted to crucify this guy, okay? So he traded it in and got a Jeep. And the irony is that Jeeps cost more than blue Ford
They cost
Mustang.
more, yep.
But everybody was cool with the Jeep. They didn't want the Mustang. It's like a $25,000 car, back then or whatever. And so there's all this weird thing. And part of it is envy. A huge part of it is envy wrapped in religious veneer. A lot of it is shame around their own lack of multiplying their thing. So they try to pull people down. And there's a lot of darkness around the topic of money. Who is actually genuinely excited when you have a financial win? Because that'll tell you a whole bunch about who your real friends are. One of my favorite quotes is be very cautious of people that don't clap and cheer when you win. And let me tell you how to make your friends weird. Go make a lot more money than them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring it back. You're going to shrink back. You're going to hide it. And all of this is spiritual warfare. 100% of it is spiritual. I don't care if someone's broke or poor. What I care is that they're living in their purpose, multiplying what's in their hand, knowing whose they are, understanding that they're walking imperfectly down the path of their mission, mandate, purpose, and destiny. That gets me revved up. Whether it's someone in a jungle feeding orphans all day and they have no money, but they're just crushing it because they're fully in on their thing, or it's the person buying the plane tickets and buying the formula to put in the bottle.
Well, I think a lot of it's perception as well. Whenever you were talking about, the Mustang versus the Jeep, I remember when the city I live in, it's, highest cost of living in the state of Oklahoma, lowest crime. And it's a very desirable city to live in, Edmond, Oklahoma. But the police force here went from the motorcycle cops driving Harleys to driving BMWs. And I remember this person in the community just like going nuts, talking about the excesses of this town and all the things and, misuse of tax dollars. What he didn't know is that my cousin was actually at the time, he has since passed. He actually passed away on duty. He was killed while on duty, unfortunately, but he was the motorcycle cop that found out that if they switched from Harleys to BMWs, that based on the cost of the motorcycle plus the maintenance, they could actually save the Edmond taxpayer more money by switching from Harleys to BMWs. But the perception was to a lot of people in the community that, oh my gosh, these guys are just driving around town and they're not even stopping murderers or the cartel. And here they are driving around on BMWs. So it comes down to a lot of perception and ignorance overall. And so that seems to be like something that what you've done with your career, Joshua, if you've kind of disabused people of their ignorances around money and capital, because not only did you succeed in the entrepreneurism space, you're still succeeding there, but at a certain point, you transition, I guess you could say, into doing more coaching and consulting. And so helping other people do the things that you had kind of done and kind of to walk down the path that you had already trodden. And so talk a little bit about that transition to where coaching and consulting was kind of like more in your bailiwick.
The main thing that I do in my company now is help people become coach consultants. And the reason why actually has a lot to do with internet guru culture. I mean, you have these big figures like Grant Cardone or Alex Hormozy. There's these people that just like speak to business owners from on high, right? And you got to 10x this and you got to ice bath your way to that. And the point is like the best way for someone to level up and grow is to be doing life with someone just like them, but they're 2 chapters ahead. Like that is the model that works. It's really the difference between like a mega church and discipleship. So I do private consulting for larger companies, but I only spend maybe 20 or 30% of my time doing that. My actual company is a software company, and we help people launch a coaching business because business is ministry. It's so spiritual. People sign up for stuff and buy softwares and hire a coach because they want to make more money. And within minutes, Kyle, we're talking about their childhood, the false beliefs they have, something that happened to them. And because that is the root that affects the fruit, right? Little roots, little fruits, big roots, big fruits. And that's really what consulting is. And what we found is like a lot of people have had at least some measure of success. They have a heart to teach and serve. They don't know where to start. So we have a software platform that helps with that. In terms of coaching, I mean, I think all of us already are a coach. It depends on what your definition of that word is, because that's also a gross word that's loaded, right? It's kind of been tainted.
Right.
So I'm a coach to my children. I'm a coach to myself. One of the isms I say is that everything is marketing and marketing is everything. And what that means is that the way we talk to ourselves is a form of marketing to ourselves. The hardest sell we're ever going to make is to ourselves and like who we think we are, what we think we're worthy of. And then, of course, as a parent, I have 5 kids. I'm constantly marketing to my kids, speaking life into them. I'm like, this is who you are. This is what you were meant for. You're destined for great things, right? And that's coaching, right? And so if you're a helpful person, especially if you're a Christian in the marketplace, whether you have a job or not, and you're not like useful and helpful to the people around you, that's kind of weird, right? We're all supposed to be in some form of community pouring out of our cup. We need to have our cup poured into. We got to pour it out. And so I don't know, I do what you want with that, but we believe that small groups of people being led by someone slightly ahead of them produces the biggest transformation on average for business.
So it's almost like a derivative of, was it see one, learn one, teach one kind of a thing. And so I think we see a lot of that in jiu-jitsu. Kind of a funny meme in the jiu-jitsu world is because the belt system is white belt. That's the beginners. Then you go blue, purple, brown, black, right? And so by the time you get to black, you should be an expert. And then there are gradations of different versions of black belts. But blue belts technically suck. So sorry to all you blue belts out there listening to this. You are better than white belts, but you still suck. Don't worry. I still feel that way sometimes. But even as a blue belt, you know more than a white belt. You're not a black belt, but there's a thing or two that you can show a white belt You might show them incorrectly, but you're a little bit farther along than they are. And so to a degree, they should shut their trap and just listen, even if you're not getting all the details and intricacies right. But for you, again, ideas versus execution. So those small groups, establishing, coaching patterns and rhythms, helping people to be able to pour into the lives, and the word you used was being helpful, and pour into those other people's lives. So I know you've created some resources that are around that idea. And so let's talk a little bit about the things that you've created, because again, some of this crescendos in a book. A lot of the people that we have on this podcast are authors, right? And so all of their entire life is now in this book, or they had one idea and they somehow turned that into 200 pages, right? And hopefully it's worth it to actually get through it. But for you, this isn't there isn't like a book to where it's like, all right, I say all these things so that you'll go buy the book, so that you'll, maybe put one or two things into practice. So how are you kind of living out the, actually helping other people do the thing?
Well, my day-to-day isn't necessarily applicable to the wide majority of your audience. I mean, one thing that's interesting that we have done is we did a family project called the Kid WarPlan. And years ago, I wanted to teach my kids what value creation is. And so we made up a family project. And so we decided to make a journal, like a 90-day journal. And the kids, and it took 2 years to make this. It was kind of a giant nightmare, actually. And we created this journal that teaches mindset and entrepreneur stuff to kids in a kid friendly way. And we hired a kid artist to illustrate it. And it was this really cool process. And then, I had my kids build a website for it. I had my kids record an ad for it. My son Maverick made 90 training videos to go along with all 90 days of the video when he was 13 years old. It took him 6 months full time every single day. And I did not help him. And then, there was days when he got upset and he's like, and he's trying to, so imagine a 13-year-old teaching a younger kid, what's the difference between money and currency? What does self-talk mean? What's leadership? What is sales and marketing? What's a net profit versus a gross profit? And all these weird things. So he had to level up and learn these things to then make a fun 3-minute video to go along with the journal. And it was this huge effort as a family project that changed my whole kid's mentality, because when we did finally put it on the internet, it kind of blew up. And these books are handmade, so they're really hard to source. They're super expensive to have produced. And we sold out of them instantly. We sold them in 19 countries, all 50 states. My kids they ship them out. They put a sticker in the thing and they ship it out. And we had thousands of these things. And so I think that could be interesting, if someone has kids or grandkids, or even for themselves, just to start thinking different. That's a resource that can help them. It's by no means my core business, but it is a real business for our family. That's what that is. What do you think about that?
Well, so let's talk a little bit more about the Kid WarPlan, because, you're kind of going against conventional wisdom here, because the physical, expensive to produce, expensive to ship book, you're not supposed to do that. Everything's supposed to be digital. It's supposed to be PDF. You download it. It's never bigger than whatever the size of the screen that you're looking at the moment. But then you have those people that are very tactile people, right? These are people that buy records for whatever reasons. They literally sit down with their record player and their expensive headphones, and that's their thing, because they want to feel the grooves of the music while they're sensing the grooves of the music. And to all you audiophiles out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I guess you go the tactile approach, but what are you seeing fruit-wise from families that actually do the Kid WarPlan, the Kid WarPlan challenge, and any of the other things that kind of offshoot from that? What is it about this book that gets these families together and thinking differently?
There's a ton, actually. I mean, we could print the journal in a regular thing and it would just be a cheap thing. And we talked about that, but my kids said, no, we want it to feel like it came out of Lord of the Rings. That's what they said at the time. And from a marketing angle, there's a ton of value in actually making it expensive. Number one is that kids now, the attention spans of kids is there's war being waged against the minds of kids. I think we all know that. The average age they get introduced to pornography is 8 or 10 years old. It's just a nightmare out there. Depression is higher, suicidal tendencies are higher, everything's terrible, even for kids in the church. And so having something that feels special and different and pattern interrupts them is like a big deal. It's a game changer. We don't need to put something on their tablet. We need to get them off the tablet. And we don't need to just throw some book at them. We need to throw an epic leather handmade. Even the paper in this book is all handmade. It's hung out in large sheets and then they tear it. When we print the material for each day of the journal, it's done on metal plates because the handmade paper can't run through a printer. So it has to be metal plates on it. And then it's hand bound together with little leather stitching. When I say it's a big deal, it's a whole thing. And we did that on purpose because, Warren Buffett said one time, there's no competitive advantage of being the second most expensive. And so these books are like $100 a piece. And that freaks people out. But because it's so polarizing is why it works so well. So some people think it's stupid. Other people think it's amazing. The whole point of it, though, is that when you get it, it is premium. It's like an heirloom. And people feel bad even writing in the journal, right? But when you present it to your kid, it's a pattern interrupt. And the bottom line is kids need to build more confidence. They need better impulse control. They need more structured daily routines that are good, that make them feel good. And that's kind of how the journal's set up. And they feel proud of themselves for doing this epic hard thing. We put a do hard things sticker in every one that we send out because that's one of our family slogans, because kids need to feel proud of themselves for like accomplishing something other than, leveling up their avatar in a video game, right?
Well, so it's interesting that you use the word heirloom, because I was literally thinking about stories that I've heard of, grandpa dies, they're going through grandpa's things to try to clear the house. And as a lot of people have pointed out before, all those things that you work so hard to get throughout your life, they're either going to end up at a garage sale being sold for 1/1000th of what you paid for it, or they're going to end up in a landfill. So congratulations on getting all those knicky-knack things. But isn't it so interesting when they find grandpa's old Bible and it's got his notes in there, his highlights, and you also find his prayer journal and all that. You want to talk about something like I literally just kind of gave myself chills thinking about what if my grandfather before he had died had something like that, and that was handed down to my dad and then maybe to me. And then now I have two sons, and it's like, look, you are part of a legacy of godliness and seeking after the Lord through his word and things like that. Like, think about how big of a deal that is, as opposed to, you just said leveling up your avatar, or like, oh, I just prestiged again in Call of Duty. Right. You can't package that and send it on to the next generation. That's something that only lasts as long as you have electricity, or you have that little box where all your little records are stored on, right? And so it does kind of, I guess, put families in a little bit of a different mindset. So I mean, Josh, you're talking to a ton of dads here, right? So there's, this is a largely 95% male audience. I would assume that the overwhelming majority of those guys are dads. And a lot of these dads kind of get stuck, right? They know they're supposed to be doing things for their kids, and, they've heard about rites of passage, but the only one they even know of is where, some tribe in Brazil puts a bunch of bullet ants in a glove and puts it on the kid's hand. And they can't do that because they'll go to prison here in America. And so they don't know what to do. They can kind of see personality quirks and characteristics in their kids, and they want to call out the beautiful things and help them kind of like, take the bad parts and push those off a little bit. But dads they're working 50 hours. They're trying to love their wives. They're trying to, read the Bible. They're trying to go to church. They're trying not to be a loser, but then they get stuck, and then they just end up on that freaking hamster wheel. And then, they don't get to do the things with their kid while the kids are living in their household. So, how can you help dads like that are kind of feeling that pressure?
I love that the conversation just ended up going here because...
Yeah, which, by the way, if I can, you should see my notes for this conversation. It is hilarious because I normally highlight as I go. Whoop, talked about that. I have no highlights on my thing right now. So this has gone completely off the rails, but I think it's going well.
Well, it's all kind of interconnected in a way. Like, we talk about business and money, but our actual heart is family, like specifically entrepreneur families. Our mission statement of my company is to equip entrepreneur families to build wealth, become radically generous, and engineer a family culture that changes the world. Like, my wife and I are all in on family stuff because me getting into business almost destroyed my marriage. And we were like that close to divorce. I mean, I was drinking back then. I had a lot of bad habits in my 20s, out of the trailer park. I started my first business, started to work, and everything was burning to the ground, but my business was actually succeeding. And what I realized back then as part of, our mission, the way I'm going to give away $100 million before I'm dead is by helping entrepreneur families build more wealth and become generous. And so it's all interconnected. So what I realized was that the reason a company is ever successful is because of, the right people and the right systems. And then my family is like falling apart. So here's the epiphany. My company had a mission statement. Why didn't my family? My company had a logo. Why didn't my family? I had like communication cadences. I would measure things. I would track things. We had manifestos. We had business plans. We had all these systems that made a business work. And with my family, there wasn't any. So I actually started like systemizing my family in my 20s. And it sounds really robotic and bad, but it's not at all. It's actually life-changing. What I did was first thing I did, I started doing Maverick Monday. Our oldest son, his name's Maverick. I didn't spend enough time with him. So I just drew a line in the sand. I said, you get a special day every week because you're worth it. And we didn't do anything magical. I'd play Legos or we'd go for a walk or we'd throw rocks in the river. And every week he looked forward to it. And what I noticed was the behavior of him noticeably and immediately changed for days because of that one system. Now we have 5 kids, so I have like a lot of these days. We have Sawyer Sunday, Maverick Monday, Tucker Tuesday, Judah May Thursday, Finley Friday. But that idea, that's one system. The Kid WarPlan journal is a system to have like a daily routine. There's a morning part, a night part. There's a reward part after every 10 days. It's a system to open up conversations with your parent about things they're never going to learn in school, literally ever. The whole thing is full of that stuff. And, we have date night with my wife and we have a rite of passage trip when my son's turned 13. We're not like magical parents. From our own pain, we started doing this years ago and it just changed everything. If you come to our house, if you ever get a chance to come up here, we have this castle on 25 acres in Michigan and the whole house has our family logo on it, the Latimer woodshed down by our road. We have pillows and blankets that say do hard things on it. That's a system. We call that proprietary language. What's a slogan or a saying or an ism that can embody a value of the Thompson family, right? There's probably things you say, put it on a t-shirt, put it on a pair of socks. Like let your kids, don't have your kids wear Under Armour, wear the Thompson brand. What does it mean to even be a Thompson? Because 200 years ago, it mattered. Like the family name mattered and we've kind of gotten away from all that. And so, my day-to-day business is what I do, but like our heart under the hood is this, husbands and wives, a lot of them feel like they're roommates. They have no connection. They have no intimacy. There's no fire in the bedroom. Everything is just going through the motion, Groundhog's Day, mad at people more successful than you, living in lack, living in envy, parenting your kids, but doing the bare minimum. A lot of people feel very stuck. And, we have things that help with that.
Okay. So, I think that this is actually really helpful because I've heard of things kind of similar to this that kind of help families put, maybe put some details around some of these ideas. But as you were talking, I forget who said it. I would love to be able to give them credit. So they're slipping in my mind at the moment, but they asked me, they were like, hey, do you pray over your kids? He used all those words very specifically, but I didn't hear him correctly. I heard, do you pray with your kids? And I said, yes. And I think he sensed that I didn't hear him correctly. He's like, no. He said, do you pray over your kids? And I was like, I'm sorry. What do you mean? Like, he's like, describe how prayer goes with your kiddos. I'm like, well, they're about to go to bed and we, we'll close our eyes and we'll let each one of the kids pray whatever they feel like they can pray. And then I'll pray and then they go to bed. And, if we see a car accident or something in public, we'll immediately, like, as we're driving, we'll pray for those families and, that we just, pray, that kind of thing. He's like, no. He's like, I'm assuming you want your sons. I really wish I could give this person credit. I'm so sorry if you're listening to this and it's you, but he's like, I'm assuming you want your boys to end up a certain kind of way. You want them to be a certain kind of man. And he's like, what kind of things would you want? I was like, well, I want them to be tough. I want them to be resilient. I want them to be courageous, but also meek, and sensitive in the right moments. I want them to be the perfect parts of tough and tender. I want them to be Lion of Judah and Lamb of God. And he's like, then pray that over your boys. And it was like, boom, it changed everything. And when I say everything, I'm not being hyperbolic. Mm-hmm. It changed everything about how I see those boys and how I see the connection because I've been given the role of headship over my household. I'm going to have to give an account to God someday for how I have shepherded those boys and catechized them and how I have led and loved my wife as Christ loved his bride, which is the church. And all it took was someone being like, no, don't pray with your kids, pray over them. So now when I pray with my boys, Josh, I say, I pray that James and Eli, with them there, and they're hearing the words from dad and they pick up everything, right? They're hearing, my dad wants me to be courageous one day, wants me to be a disciple of Jesus and wants me to be brave and also wants me to be sensitive. And they don't even understand the totality of what these words mean. We don't understand them as adults, but they're hearing it and they're marinating in it. And so like if the Latimer family, here's like, I don't know, here's the 5 top things that the Latimer family is about, or here's this family crest. This is the Thompson family crest because ours was lost back in, some Celtic days, but in bygone eras. But it's something, I guess, to rally around. I'm trying not to be too romantic about it, Josh, but I've seen things like this have a similar impact on me personally, I guess.
I mean, to me, it's just logical because there's life and death in the power of the tongue, and words have the power to create and destroy. And you, like you said, as the head, are like, you're speaking what's going to happen. And you can see it within like 2 seconds. If you have a young kid and you just speak life into them, it's unbelievable what happens. My youngest daughter struggles with being impatient sometimes, and she's a pistol. Okay. And what I started doing with her is I just look at her and I say, one of the things I like best about you is how patient you are. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. A lot of people aren't as good at that as you are. And then I walk away, right? And like day by day by day, you have to tell your kids who they are. One of the quotes my wife loves is, if you don't tell your children who they are, the world will do it for you.
Amen.
So family systems, all these things, like these books, buy the book, don't buy the book. But there's you need to step up and do this anyway, because it creates like a force field around your family. I don't know how else to say it, but when you're speaking to your kids, you're safe, you're protected, you're unafraid. You're always in the right place at the right time because your footsteps are ordered by the Lord, right? You're the head, not the tail. You're designed to succeed. You were made on purpose for a purpose. You have a mission, a mandate, and a destiny. You can't fail even if you tried, right? Before the foundations of the world, God prepared good works for you to do, which means he made the stuff he wants you to do before he even made you. I hope you have a great day. I mean, if you're talking even partially like that to a child, they get programmed correctly. And then maybe they'll grow up and not have the same, anxiety around money and success and serving and all these things, because they won't have to unlearn bad programming.
That's right. That's right. Well, Josh, you're right. You keyed in on it. This didn't go anyway like I thought it would, but I think it went way better. That's when I love interviews, is when they go completely off the notes, and I'm deeply satisfied by the end of the conversation because of the ground that we covered. So we have covered a ton of ground, but that's all for me. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?
No. I just thank you for having me. I think you're absolutely phenomenal at what you do, and that's not patronizing. You're really good at this. It's really awesome to watch you in your element, and I think you're having a huge impact. So thank you.
I appreciate it, Josh. We'll talk again soon. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed my time with Josh Latimer. Before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Only link I got for you today is a link to Kid WarPlan. And so if you really want to get after it, I talked to him off air about, the link and all those things. We want to make sure you guys, the Undaunted.Life audience, is getting after the Kid WarPlan, that you're checking it out, that you're kind of seeing what that can do for you and your family. So guys, that is the only link, and it is right there in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.